Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to put this up here. My name is Mia Love. You got a little bit of an introduction. Did you say I had 2 kids or 3 kids?
3.
Okay, I thought I heard 2. 3 is a big difference. There's a big difference between 2 and 3. Anyway, that was pretty accurate. My parents immigrated over from Haiti with $10 in their pockets and this hope that the American dream did exist. And I actually, it's interesting. I was just talking to somebody before. My dad scrubbed toilets for a while. He took a second job to scrub toilets at an elementary school. And I remember being in high school not telling people that. I was so embarrassed about that. And it wasn't until after college that I was just so proud that he would be able to do that. He would do whatever it took to make sure that he provided for us and did whatever he could. He said, as long as these hands work, you won't need for anything. I'll do whatever I can. We may not have everything we want, but we'll certainly have the things that we need. And so I really appreciate him for that. I'm going to talk to you, I'm used to talking about politics and policies, and I'm actually going to try as much as I possibly can to kind of throw that out the window and really talk about you and what you want to do and what your purpose is and the difference that one person can make. I remember listening to a story by Lauren Ainsley. It was about this boy who was walking along a beach. And after a terrible storm, he saw a bunch of starfish that were actually washed up on the beach. And so, of course, this boy, feeling really bad, knowing the sun was coming up, and if he didn't get these starfish into the water, that they were going to die, started picking them up one by one and throwing them into the water. Now, there were thousands, by the way. And one guy came up to him and said, "Young man, what are you doing? You can't possibly make a difference. You can't possibly save all of these starfish." And he looked really deflated and looked down and kind of looked around and realized the task that he had. And then he kind of pepped up again, picked up a starfish, hurled it into the ocean, and he said, "I made a difference to that one." And he started picking them up and doing it again. And as this man watched him do this, he started saying, well, I'm going to start picking some up too and throwing them in there. I can't let him do it by himself. All of a sudden, the whole beach was doing this. And sooner or later, all of the starfish were back into the ocean. Now, it's interesting that, I talk about this young man and the difference that he has made. And, some people, I don't know, who's heard that story before, by the way? Okay. And the reason why I tell that story is because there's so many that are like that, where people see this daunting task and they think, I can't possibly do this. I want you to know that politics is not something I said I wanted to do when I grow up. As a matter of fact, I went to school and got a fine arts degree. I studied music theater, and I wanted to do several things. I wanted to perform, and I did some performances, which was great, but I wanted to perform on Broadway, and I wanted to do something different. After a while, I found myself, I got married, I ended up doing some local shows, and I got into marketing. Actually, my arts degree, believe it or not, led me into marketing. I remember when I first ran for city council, I didn't want to put on my degree that I had a degree in fine arts. I didn't want to put on my resume that I had a degree in fine arts, because the thing to do was to get an MBA, right? Or a business degree or something really prestigious. And I read this book by Daniel Pink. Has anybody read that? It's called A Whole New Mind. And one person read it? Just one? Okay. Anyway, somebody told me to read it, and he said, actually, it's interesting. You shouldn't downplay your degree, because it's actually opened up my eyes in different areas. Think of a KitchenAid, for instance. It's not enough for a KitchenAid to actually function, right? It's actually got to look good on the table. A car. Anybody seen commercials about cars? It doesn't talk about, not too many times, it doesn't talk about the functions and the features. Usually it's how you feel in it, how the car makes you feel. Who's seen like the Chrysler commercial? with M&M. There's like an M&M Chrysler commercial, right? Watch commercials, you'll see what I'm talking about. Because that's the one thing you can't actually ship overseas. You can't get a computer to be more creative than the human brain can be. So a whole lot of people are studying and trying to think how to incorporate their arts into what's needed here. So I just bring that up. So no matter what degree that you're getting, there's always a niche for it. Do not downplay your education. It might not lead you to where you think you're going to go. It may actually lead you to something better. After I started working for a company called EcoPass, working in their marketing area, I started getting a lot of requests from my neighbors to go and fix this. Mia, you can go and, we've got these bugs that are bugging us, and, you go and get somebody to spray it. And I had to fight that battle. Sooner or later, I was fighting so many battles that my neighbors came to me and said, run for city council, because you need to fix some of the things that's happening in the city. So I ran for city council. In 2007, 2008, I should say, budget of 2008, we hit a major hurdle. We were looking at a $3.5 million shortfall. Now, that may not seem like very much in the grand scheme of things. And in Washington, if we had a $3.5 million shortfall, that would be great. But no, they're in the trillions. But when you're sitting there and you're talking about, paying for stamps, and you're talking about a city that's growing from 1,000 to over 20,000, I mean, that's a big amount. And so we had to roll up our sleeves. We didn't have the option of kicking the can down the road. And I'm going to leave this advice with you. In order to change any policy, in order to make a difference, you have to be able to get people to come with you. Believe it or not, being able to kind of talk to people and get in front of people came from an arts degree. Getting them to believe in the things that you want to get out there. People make the decision here before they make it here. So during this struggle, it was very difficult. I mean, people were about to take my head off when it came to eliminating the baby contest, believe it or not. The baby contest was one of the biggest issues. I had mothers coming in saying, hello, my child has won 3 years in a row. If you think you're going to take away the baby contest, you've got something else coming, and you are not going to get reelected next year. Sounds ridiculous, right? But it was seriously a big deal because they felt like that was a job that they needed to do, that I needed to do for them. So I have to ask myself, is it affordable? Is it sustainable? Is it my job? Those are the three questions I ask myself. And then everything else, I try and go out and get people to believe in the things that get them to see the vision of what we're trying to do. We rolled up our sleeves. We cut quite a bit. We, about 400% of the proposed tax increase. I said, no way, I have to pay for that. There's no way that that's happening. And we took a city on the brink of bankruptcy and made it financially stable. That was very difficult to do. And a lot of people were mad at first, but then I was elected as mayor. I knew I knew where the shortfalls were. I knew that if you go out and spend a little, eventually you end up in this habit of spending where you feel like you have to provide everything for everyone. One of the things I also wanted to talk about, because this is about your career. It's about making a difference. I believe that the best, most effective solutions are found at the most local level. That means you. That means whatever you choose to do, it's not enough to go out and have a career. You have to affect some change in your community. The world doesn't revolve around you. I tell my children that all the time. So I'm going to leave the same advice my father left to me when I went to college. You cannot be a burden to society. You have to find a way to give back. Even if it's in your job or outside of your job, you have to find a way to give back, because if you're not going to get involved, someone will do it for you. I promise you that. And it may not be what you want to have happen. I'll give you an example of how communities can make a difference. 2 years ago, I had some people come to me and say, Mayor, we need you to build a library. Eagle Mountain has a library, Harriman has a library, Lehigh has a library, we've got 20,000 people, you've got to go get us a library. Now remember the 3 questions I asked myself: is it affordable, is it sustainable, is it my job? So libraries, I love libraries. I want my children to have a library. But libraries are all expenditure, 0 revenue. So I had to stand up, knowing that I was going to get my head chopped off, and say, if you want a library, I will do everything I can to help you, but you have to go out and get a library yourself. How many cities do you know of that build a library themselves? Without city funds, by the way. How many people do you know does? Not one. So of course I'm standing on the principle here, and I initially wanted to see if it would actually work, if people could actually go out if they were going to do it, because they told me it was an essential service. So I said, if it's an essential service, people will get up and they'll go out and build a library. Well, people started gathering around. They started getting businesses involved. They started collecting books from people. What they didn't use, they repaired and sold. It was really interesting, and they would take anything. It was funny. When you're not paying for something, or when you're getting something from somebody, you're not as picky about what you're getting. And so 2 years is what it took. They started doing movie nights at the park. Parts of proceeds on certain nights and certain restaurants would go to the library. I want you to know that we weren't just building a library. We were building a community, because people started gathering together for the same cause. These weren't Washington elites, guys. These were moms, dads, bankers. What are you studying? Political science. These were council members and mayors, right? What are you studying? Paralegals. These were normal people who had a normal life, who aren't sitting there in Washington in this world that doesn't exist. Today we have a full-blown library, and it's not on the backs of the taxpayers. It is done by the community. And if it's interesting, I invite you guys to go into this library, because something that I thought was actually impossible happened. And it just gave somebody the opportunity. I just gave somebody the opportunity and said, why don't you go ahead and build one? And they looked at me like, yeah, right, like that can happen. But in the process, they realized that something that was impossible was actually achievable. We have a full-blown library today. And it's not like any other library. I really want you to go and visit it. My favorite thing is this plaque on the wall. And it's got these little tiles and handprints on them by these little, by all of the youth, like these little kids in elementary school who actually paid for the tiles themselves with their allowance money. And it says Timothy, 5th grade, or Sarah, 1st grade. And these are the community. These are members of the community. So I want you to know that it is possible. Another way that people can make a difference. After a huge fire, 6,000 acres of fire that was caused by someone who was doing something illegally, we ended up getting a flood a month later. A month later. It was absolutely devastating. When I went up there, I could not believe the devastation. This wasn't just water that came off the mountains. This was debris and rocks and boulders. I could actually pick up what I thought was liquid and make a ball of it. It was absolutely soot, and it was from the fires and there was no vegetation to stop it, so it was from the fires that came off the mountain. I remember putting my hands on my head as a mayor, thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to deal with this? We knew that federal government wasn't going to come in and help us, and they certainly weren't going to help the people that had their homes destroyed. So what did we do? If we can build a library, we can certainly clean up several homes. So we got on the phone, started calling as many people as we possibly could, church leaders, community leaders. I want you to know, the next morning, 5,000 people showed up in our city to shovel mud, dirt, debris out of homes of people they didn't even know. That is the power that a community has. I'm going to leave you another piece of advice. This is advice number 2. In life, you have 2 choices. You can either make progress or you can make excuses. You can't make both. If something doesn't happen, you cannot blame somebody else. You have to rise above it and say, how can I make this better for me? What can I do? I want you to know that I am not elected as mayor because I wear a nice pair of heels, because I happen to be a certain color or a certain gender. I was elected because of my abilities and the things that I've been able to do in the past. Every single one of you have specific talents that you can share. And if something happens, you don't sit there and say, oh, this happened because of this happens because of that. Make progress. Figure out what you're going to do about it. Life is not going to be perfect. You have to figure out a way to get up. And last but not least, I'll leave you with this. I want you to know, as I started to run, I realized how much goal setting can actually help somebody in their future. I remember the first time I started to run, I know he said I was an avid runner, whatever that means. Avid runner, whenever I have time to actually do it. I remember when I started to run, it really hurt. I hated it. I hated every minute of it. I remember just thinking, I'm going to just go a mile. Then I went like 2 miles. And it still hurt. The longer I went, the more it hurt. I was doing maybe about a 12-minute mile when I first started. I want you to know that today, I still run. And it still hurts. It does. It's not easy. But the difference is, instead of running a 12-minute mile, I can do, on a good day, an 8-minute mile. On a bad day, a 9-minute mile. I just ran a half marathon last Saturday with my husband, and we thought we were just taking our time strolling down the mountain, taking 3 different bathroom breaks and all sorts of things, and we actually came in a pretty decent time. And I was like, wow, imagine if I actually raced this darn thing. But what I'm trying to say is that practice does make it better. It does make perfect. You have to continue to go and practice what you do and perfect your talents. And like I said, in education, whether you think it's going to lead you in a certain direction, let it lead you somewhere. Take advantage of the tools that you have and make sure that it leads you somewhere meaningful. Do not underestimate the difference you can make, whether you're 60 or 11. I have a couple of statistics I wanted to share with you. Martin Luther King was 34 years old, younger than I was, when he delivered the famous I Have a Dream speech. The Wright brothers were also in their early 30s when they flew the first airplane. Thomas Jefferson won the first election to the Virginia State Legislature at the age of 26. 21, Philo Farnsworth invented the first electronic television. And my personal favorite, at the age of 11, Frank Eberson discovered and later patented the popsicle. When he realized, popsicle, I know, it made him a lot of money. Here's what happened to him. He left a fruit cup with a mixing stick in it, a juice cup with a mixing stick in it on the porch on a freezing cold night. He went out to go get it in the middle of the night, and there it is, frozen. Picked it out and thought, wow, this is awesome. Patented it and invented the popsicle. So don't underestimate the difference that you can make. I want you to know that our American history is filled of examples of youth doing amazing things. We live in what I believe is the greatest country in the world. We have so many opportunities, but please do not believe that it is going to be like this all the time. We've got some problems in our country. I don't know if you've noticed. $17 trillion of debt. Fiscal debt limits being discussed every moment. Government takeover of everything. Healthcare, education. People like you and I are having a difficult time having a say in the process, and we're watching people in Washington play ping pong with our lives. They can't get along. They can't get anything done. They sit up there, each and every single one of them, by the way, 535 members of Congress make $174,000. Washington bureaucrats, if you think of Department of Education, there's 3,500 of them alone that make over $100,000, while your teachers make pennies. So understand that we have to do everything that we can Because here's what's going to happen. It is not going to change unless we, the people, do something about it. Unless we decide, you know what, we're not going to let you make the decision. We want the wheel. We want to steer where this country is going. And until we make that change, nothing's going to happen in Washington. Until we decide to get up and start making some noise. What I mean by that is get involved. Somehow, some way, get involved. Whether it's on the local level, state level, national level, get involved somehow. Use your talents, use your careers to make a difference in life. Do something good. I want you each to understand that although this is not what I said I wanted to do when I grow up, it's been worth it. It's been difficult, but it's been worth it. Because my children get up and they see the things that I'm doing. My daughter actually, when she ended last year, she was getting an A- in Spanish, which was apparently a tragedy for her. I said, you know, gosh, an A- isn't going to kill you. And she looked at me and she said, Mom, that's not what we do. She's like, if we deserve an A and we can get an A, we're going to get an A. That's what we do. And that was pretty cool because it was her. It wasn't me that was pushing. This was her. She wants to be able to build rockets when she grows up. She honestly believes that she is going to build a rocket that sends the first human being to Mars. Imagine that journey. And what if she doesn't get there? Imagine the journey on the way there. I think if she sets her mind to it, she can do it. I think you could do whatever you set your mind to. So I want to leave as much time for question and answer, but I want you to know it's been a privilege for me to come here and to talk to you, and I hope that this was helpful. Like I said, there are many different paths that you can take, but you get to choose, and you get to decide what you're going to do, and if you're going to be a burden to society, or if you're going to be the type of person that gives back, whether you're going to be the type of person that makes excuses or the type of person that makes progress. It's totally up to you. Okay?
So yeah, if you have questions, come line up and I'll hand you the microphone.
Questions my favorite part, so please get up, ask questions. I know you have a question. Go ahead and get up there and ask a question. And I'm glad to see, by the way, let's turn around. Let everybody know he's got an I voted today sticker. Good for you.
It's very important.
Yes. Should you tell him you know me?
I do know you. Me and I know each other. She lived in American Fork before she moved to Saratoga Springs.
And you can go ahead and date me and tell them that I was actually in Young Women's when he was in Young Men's. By the way. Go ahead and date me like that.
Fun. And she actually inspired me to run for student council. Not student council.
Not date me.
City
date
council.
The age, by the way. Just let's get that clear. Friends keep friends off YouTube.
You talk a lot about your family and how your father gave you that message about you will give back to society, you will not be a burden. But what is it about, who else has been your mentor throughout your life? Who has been that other inspiration to stand up and do something to make a difference?
You know, I have actually many people. Obviously, my parents built that foundation for me, but you know, I've watched some political leaders. I happen to be a fan of Ronald Reagan. I think he was one of those that really inspired people, and gave people the vision of who we are and what we're made of, and let people know that this country isn't great because we've had it easy. It's great because of our character and what we've been able to do in spite of our challenges. But I would have to say that the people around me, it's always been the community that's always pushed me and said, get off your butt and go do this for us, please. Get off your butt and make this happen. Also, those who don't always agree with me have always been great. I believe, this is Aristotle, my favorite quote from Aristotle, is the mark of an intelligent mind is someone who can entertain a thought without having to necessarily accept it. I think it's important to not be closed-minded, to open up, because one of the things that I've been able to do is learn from my sitting council members. I think that's the problem with Washington too, is that no one's listening to other people's ideas. They're not willing to open up and say, you know what, I actually can accept this and not accept this, so let's work with what we can work with together. So that's one of the things that I think that we need to work on. But people around me, the people who have challenged me, the people who have not always agreed with me, and I would say mostly my kids, because I would not do this if it weren't for the fact that I'm being a parent and looking out for their future. That includes you.
So I know you had some difficult debates with Jim Matheson.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn from those debates, and what was that like going up against Jim Matheson? Also, it was a really close race. How did you how are you bouncing back from the loss, and what are you doing to move forward from here?
It was within 768 votes. Who's counting? The debates, they're really interesting because you never know what people are going to throw at you. I actually like debates because, people have to they can't hide behind commercials, which are false. But the other thing is debates, when they're too restrictive, you can't really call somebody out on issues. So that was very difficult. I've learned also that there's a reason why people speak in sound bites. It's because you have to say what you believe in like a sentence. Talk about healthcare, for instance. I can talk about healthcare for 4 hours, maybe 5, several days. I tried to get on the exchange at 2 a.m., finally got on it at around 2:30 or something. But you can't explain that in just a soundbite. It's very difficult. And people want someone who's got solutions, and it's very difficult to explain a solution in one sentence. You shouldn't be able to have a solution in one. So that's one of the things that's really difficult, but I've learned to at least start the dialogue by that one sentence, to get out and make sure that people understand where I am, what I believe in that one sentence, and then we can continue to have that dialogue. I've also learned quite a bit. You have 2 years of learning what's going on in Washington, and it's not encouraging. The more I learn, the more discouraging it gets. But I've learned a lot more in terms of policy and how things work and how they shouldn't work. And last but not least, what did you say? What have I done to bounce back? I took up oil painting. And I've given it up again. It's so funny. I took my husband to Hobby Lobby and I started picking up oil paints, and he's like, "What are you doing? You don't know what you're doing." And I said, I need to zen. I need to just kind of do something other. I need to just kind of do something that's quiet. And I did that for about 3 months, and it was fun. And then there's work to do. So you can either decide or you just get back out and you finish what you started. So there's some unfinished business I have to take care of. And so we're going at this again. Thank you for the question, by the way.
You mentioned how people need to obviously act on things that they believe in and get something going and inspire change. But before we do that, we should figure out what we really believe in and what we're actually promoting. So how does someone who's young, still impressionable in their early 20s, who's maybe learning a lot of different things in college and is pressured by the social media and hears all these things on the news and is raised in a certain type of culture, how does that person kind of align themselves with what they truly believe and decides what to stand for themselves?
That is a fantastic question, especially when I can just give you my experience. When you raise children to respect adults and to not question their teachers or question authority. And it's very difficult because I'll have my kids come back and say, my teacher said this, this, and this. I was like, well, did you ask them about this? They're like, well, they're teachers. They know everything. Well, I'm sorry for teachers that are in here. They don't know everything. They don't. And I think the way that you learn is by questioning. And you ask questions respectfully, by the way. And you cannot trust somebody else's words because they're somebody else's thoughts. You have to go out and get as much information as possible and figure out from there where you want to go, what you believe in. I still do that all the time. I think that I know something, and then I say, that's a really good point. And then I refine my policies by then. But I do have a base that I work from, and that is, as much as I can get the decision making in your hands, the better off we are. I do not believe that people in DC can make a decision in your home better than you can make it in your home. That also means that it's going to take us stumbling a little bit, because they can't save us from everything. They try, but they cannot save us from everything. That means we have to have the ability to make decisions, reap the benefits, suffer the consequences. But as we are growing and as we learn, we need to know that failure isn't final, that people actually can learn from them and grow and make improvements. My parents failed many, many, many times, but their failures made them better. I have failed many times. I have lost an election, but that loss made me better. So, learn, continue to grow, and as long as we can get that decision making as close to you as possible, then you'll have the tools that you need to refine where you are, what your thoughts are, and share them with others, respectfully. Does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you.
Can I go ahead and ask her? Thank you. I know my personal experience, and this is my last semester, is we've got an awful lot in our heads by the time we're done with school. How did you apply a fine arts degree to politics and everything else that you did? Does that make sense? as a
No,
question?
that actually does. And a lot of people, and it wasn't until I actually got into it that I realized maybe this was from my degree and the things that I've been taught. Along with the fine arts degree, included in that was like singing and dancing and acting. And I'm not saying that I'm acting. What I'm saying is that I found a way through that to portray here and extend that out to other people. In other words, I was able to wear what I was feeling in my heart on my sleeve and safely be able to share that with people. It's very difficult to do, to wear your heart on your sleeve. I make no apologies for the fact that I do this because I love my kids and I want them to have the same opportunities. But that came from that being able to let go and do that. Also, like I said, the right brain of things, I try and paint a picture for people. And as a mayor, it's very easy for people to try and do what's popular for the next 4 or 5 years. What I try to show them is a vision of the next 20, 30, 40 years, because that's what my job really is to make sure we create a city that people can enjoy, that's financially stable, and the decisions that we make today will affect us later. And so even here today, when you graduated from high school, maybe some people a long time ago, some people recently, they said, your future is tomorrow. Well, guys, it started. We're in it. It's today. And so, figure out what your talents are and then use them. And like I said, you may not use your degree in the way that you think you may use it, but you have to find a way to make sure that your life is meaningful outside of that. And nothing's wrong with making money. Nothing is wrong with making money. Go out and make money and create jobs so that other people can make money. Just throwing it out there.
So you've talked a lot about like listening to other people and learning from them and working with them. But you're also a very principled person, and you have you talked about your 3 questions. Is this my job? Is this affordable? Is it sustainable? So let's say if you were to be elected to Congress when you run again, how would you make sure to balance your principles along with working with people?
I think it goes hand in hand, because one of the things that, like I said, my principles are very simple. I try and get them to the most simplest form possible. That means keeping the decisions in your hands. My job in Washington, or my job would be to go out, listen to what my district wants, figure out those priorities, and then go to Washington and get people to come along with us. They're very simple. I mean, there are a lot of people that will say, well, gosh, I'm trying to figure out an example. I keep bringing up healthcare or budgeting. Let's talk about budgeting, right? There are a lot of people that say, hey, by the way, you work with people, I want you to spend $7,000 on fireworks, or I want you to build a library. I wanted a library also, but I just kind of showed a different way that we can get it without them having to pay for it. So people who didn't necessarily use the library weren't paying for it. Does that make sense? That's how I was able to add my principles with working with other people. So I said, we want a library, let's figure out how to get it. How do we do that? Let's think outside the box. Too many times, when I talk about limited government, too many times people think that limited government means that you're cutting everything. That's baloney. That's not what I mean when I say that. Limited government means everything is applied at the appropriate level. What's appropriate for Washington to do? What's appropriate for the states to do? What's appropriate for the counties, the cities, and us at home? That's what I'm talking about. It's not about getting things done and responding to the community. It's what outlet do we use and what's most effective?
I don't know if I need the mic. Yeah, you said that you were on the health exchange at 2 in the morning or something. So did you have health insurance, or what was your experience?
No, I have.
or-
No, I was just. Let's
Did
be
you sign
clear.
up? Did you sign up? Was my question.
No, I didn't. No, I was actually. I should probably clear that up. I went on the exchange just to see because I have to educate myself on what's going on and trying to navigate through it. I can't go out and talk to people without actually going and seeing what's being offered. We have health insurance, and we're going to end up having it for at least another 2 years, but then who knows what my husband's company is going to do. So, yes, I went on just to explore
Okay.
and educate myself.
Just was curious the way you said it. It sounded like you purchased it or something.
No,
Okay.
no. Gosh, and if that shows up on a commercial, you guys better have my back. Yes? Yeah. Because, yeah.
Hi. First of all, thanks a lot for coming. Very good to see you. Quick question about your previous campaign against Jim Matheson. One thing that was sticking out to me when I did a paper about it was you're wanting, and clarify if I'm wrong, wanting to just get rid of the Department of Education's like subsidized
That was one of
loans.
the tidbits that you take out of a speech like this, and then you knew something was wrong with that, didn't you? I've
well-
got 3 kids in public education.
That's how I was wondering if you would expand on like how low-income students could finance their education without being taken advantage of.
Are you talking about student loans?
Yes.
Okay. Here's the thing, and you guys could probably get this. And again, this is probably something that I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The unlimited flood of funding from Washington is bringing up prices of education. We need to open it up so that as many people can provide funding for education so that we keep prices down for education. By the time my daughter is 12 years old, the average cost of tuition per year will be $150,000. I want you to go back and look at schools and go back to 10 years previously, and you'll see how high it's grown. It's grown faster than the rate of inflation, over 500% more than inflation. So you guys have to go and look at that. That's the problem I have. I think the takeover, by the way, Congress just voted to increase those interest rates also. So not only are they pushing it back, you're supposed to pay it back to them with interest. How is my daughter supposed to get an education at $150,000 per year after 4 years? Think about that. And then her portion of the debt. How is she supposed to have a future? How are you supposed to have a future? So I want to keep the price of education as low as possible so that people can either work their way through, maybe even pay it off themselves, or get a loan from somebody that doesn't have a higher interest rate or doesn't have a high interest rate. But at least you get to choose. When you have options, you get to choose. The same thing always happens when government has too much control of something. It always happens. Prices go up, quality goes down. Same thing always happens. So I'm an advocate for students. I want students to get education at the lowest price possible, because if it continues to grow, what ends up happening? The people who cannot afford education are those who are lower income, middle income. They can't either work their way through, they'll never be able to pay it back, or they don't have any options. The only people that have options at that point are the people who can afford to pay for their children at a much higher rate. And we don't want that to happen. Thank you.
Did you mean to say 15,000 or 150,000 a year?
150,000 a year.
Where are you I don't disagree. I'm sorry to just jump in. but
No,
where
no,
are
no,
you
no.
coming
So
from?
I'm looking at the rate of
At
inflation.
Harvard?
So
At Harvard or here at UVU?
I'm talking about, so if you look at, we did some studies, you look at the prices of UVU. UVU, in-state tuition, I want to make sure I get those numbers. It's going to be close. But it's actually grown from $3,000 to $13,000 in less than 10 years. I'm looking at the rate of that tuition is going up. And so I'm looking at the time that she gets to school at this rate, what it's going to be. The school that I went to, University of Hartford, the cost of tuition was $24,000 a year. Today, it's $44,000 a year.
Well, you're right. I mean, as long as they just keep throwing money at it. then the
It
college
continues to
universities
go
raise the
up.
prices
It continues to go up. And what we want to do is make sure that we create more of a free market so that not one person is monopolizing giving out those funds.
Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you for asking. Anything else? Yes.
How far do you want to go? Do you want to be president someday?
No. Did you ask that? Did you hear what she said? She said, how far do you want to go? Do you want to be president one day? I said, no. I want to actually have a life. I want to have a life and enjoy life. I think that everybody has a time and a season, and everybody should serve some way and then get out and let somebody else serve. Yes. I'm saying yes.
Not to keep it going into politics, but I guess that's what the question. What are your feelings on term limits in light of what you just said?
I think that I would be fine with them. I would be okay, but like I said, term limits, it would be nice because the easiest term limit is actually people going to the polls and saying, that's it, you're done. We need to get, our state actually has one of the lowest voter turnouts. We went from being in the top 4 to being the bottom. And so we need to do a little bit better job of getting out and actually voting. Do you have an I voted sticker? Awesome. Good job. How many people voted today? I'm putting you on the spot. Everyone needs to get out and vote.
I have a 7 a.m. class, so I'm going to go
Tonight, yes.
cross my heart.
Awesome. Go out and vote. Everyone should be registered to vote. Go out and vote, please.